Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing you another amazing guest. His name is Mr. Josh Simon. He owns a company called SimonCRE.com. They are a real estate development company, and we're going to talk to him about how he built this company from the beginning, the humble origins of starting out by himself, all the way up over the last 12 years to a 60-plus person company doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And we're going to speak about the success progression of what he did, how he did it, and what you should do now, all the way from where he was to what the culture shift has been in the industries and the employees and things like that, as we all know has happened, to how do you keep in touch and help people feel valued? How do you sell? What would he like to have if somebody was selling to him? And other different assorted things on this podcast. So grab your pen, grab your paper, or put it down in digital, and let's go to the interview with Mr. Josh Simon. Josh, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get into your story for sure. I mean, you have, if I remember correctly, you started in commercial real estate when you were about 2004. Then you started your own company in 2011. But in between that, was it? You had a VoIP company, a voice over internet protocol company that you built and publicly, it was publicly traded and you sold?
Yeah. So 2004, I was actually in college and I got a job as an intern at a shopping center development company. And so I worked with that group for 6 years through college, finished college, and then started my own company, a real estate company. And at the time, 2010, obviously a difficult market to start a business, but also had a hosted VoIP company. And we grew that company, and actually we sold it to a publicly traded company a couple of years later, when I finally realized that the kind of machine gun approach doesn't work as well as when you're the shotgun, when you're very targeted. And I guess that was a good early learning lesson for me.
I think it's a great learning lesson for a lot of people, right? Because so many people are trying to build a $100 million company before they get a $5 million company when they're starting up. And so they kind of go out and, tentacles in everywhere trying to figure it out. But what I just heard is that focus has actually allowed you to get to, I would say success more quickly. Is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure. I think anytime you're starting a business, you're trying to figure out what your product is, what value you create. And so you might do a few things that maybe aren't going to be your core focus. But I think the sooner that you can get to that focus, the more successful you'll be. And then you also, as we've grown, which now, fast forward 12 years, when I started the company, I literally had nothing. We've grown it without investors to be, we'll do $150 million of revenue this year. We'll probably have about $500 million of projects in the pipeline, all in 12 years, 60 employees. And so now we've matured to a stage where now we're experimenting and we're trying new projects, because what got us to this stage isn't what's going to get us to the next stage.
Makes a lot of sense. So stay focused as much in the beginning as you can. In other words, try a few things, but get one focal point that's working, build upon that focal point, and then drive it up to a certain point. Now you've got to innovate. One has to kind of branch out at that point, because as you just said, what got you there won't continue to get you to grow beyond there in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases.
Correct.
All right. That's
and
great.
I think for us too, it's as the business matures, right? I'm having a baby this November, our first child. married. I want to spend time obviously with my wife, and I want to be a good father. And so what we've done in the last 12 years is a lot of single tenant net lease, and we would be volume, volume, volume. Now we still want to do a lot of these smaller single tenant projects, but we also want to sprinkle in the bigger projects that have more meaning to me, more purpose, and they require a lot less time per project when you think about it in a grander scale. And so I think it's evolving into what the CEO, what I want, and making it more of a lifestyle business.
So for those people who are listening, you now have a real estate development company, a commercial real estate development company, correct? You sold the telecommunications company, so the single tenant net. That's
so if you single tenant net lease. So picture a Starbucks in a shopping center that's freestanding. That's considered a single tenant net lease deal. A KFC, a Taco Bell. Those deals have become extremely popular in the last 20 years as a way for investors to buy them, and they almost act as a bond. You own the real estate, the tenant pays you, and these tenants sign long-term leases. And so we, as a developer, find the deal, get the lease signed, develop the building, and then we look to sell that almost like you sell a bond, and an investor buys that typically through a tax-deferred 1031 exchange. And then they live off the income. And the way we make money is the difference between the cost to build and what we could sell it for.
Makes a lot of sense. So when you're starting, a lot of people listening to this already have established businesses. There's a few startups, but for the most part, they have established businesses. What were some of the strategies in the beginning? Like, let's go back where you were just kind of beginning out, doing maybe 5 million or so. What kind of got you from like 5 million to say 20 million? Like what was some of the kind of focus? I know you had a direct focus, but was it, you went out and expanded a sales team, you put more into marketing? Where do you think people should focus when they start getting to that point?
For us, it was really understanding where other developers in our space fell short. One of our core values is be first, be fast, persist. So much of our competition is the opposite. They're not fast. They don't persist. They take their time on responses. And so one of the early things we did is we brought in-house counsel. So full-time attorney, transactional attorney. Why? Well, now we can turn purchase agreements, leases, other documents around in record time. And now the industry has, like a saying in our office, Simon speed. It's Simon speed. And so we've built this branding on that. Hey, we move really fast. Now, fast forward to today, we're doing much more complicated projects. We still are super fast, but we've had to slow that down slightly to make sure that we're very thorough and we're not missing anything. Because when you have multiple tentacles on a project, there can be a lot of unintended consequences if you move too quick.
Makes a lot of sense. So what I heard was you found something to differentiate on. That was probably a pain point, I would suspect, that in the industry, people, because I used to do a lot of real estate like flips, right? And the same thing, be like just dragging time. Well, time is money in flips, because the longer you keep it, the less money you make. So if I could find somebody, for example, who was an outsourced entity that could come in and do what I needed in the flip, and they could do it in 3 days versus somebody doing it in a day, 2 weeks. It was much more advantageous for me to do that because it cut the time frame. And now the other people on the project could also do what they were needing to do. Let's say it was an electrician or whatever.
Yep.
So what I heard was Simon speed, which is really cool. I love that. And that was a differentiate point for you. So people in the industry were like, hey, we don't have to wait this long. It's kind of like drive-through coffee. You know what I mean? You don't have to go into the not to commoditize it to that level, but I mean, Starbucks has made a lot of money on drive-through coffee.
Yeah. And there's also just universal things like communication, right? The more touch points you can have with your customers and vendors, the better. We started creating weekly, and this is not, it's not, done by everybody. More and more people are taking this up now, but communicating project updates every week, sending out weekly construction pictures, small stuff like this keeps you in front of your customers. And so, hey, that's another pain point. These customers, hey, are we going to be able to open this year? I want to see progress. Another thing that we brought in is my background in tech. We actually started a software development kind of company within our company where we've designed a lot of these. We found that there was no off-the-shelf software to run project management for us. And so we built our own custom software. Again, that goes back to keeping up at Simon speed.
I love the fact that you're doing weekly communication, because it's well, let's be honest, in your industry and in most industries, it's kind of like intuitive to think that you should do that, but most companies don't do this, whether it's B2B or B2C. So like I just you and I were talking, I just purchased two homes, right? And I mean, to get a furniture store to communicate with me on where my order is I mean, I'm better off running down the street with a bullhorn trying to figure it out, right? So it's like, it's frustrating to that point. But if you're having weekly communication within the industry that is traditionally not known for that, I got to imagine that that's a huge differentiation point where people are going, you know what? You know, when Simon Speed comes along, people listen, if you will, right? So what can other companies do to actually create their own version of either Simon Speed, you know, where they're communicating better? Because communication is the bloodline to all actual relationships. I mean, good communication anyways, or, you know, poor communication is the destruction. So what somebody's listening to this, they're going, oh my gosh, that's really cool. I need to create my own, I don't know, you know, Jackson Speed or whatever they call it. What would be maybe some of the steps that they could first look at and possibly put in play that, you know, aren't too overwhelming?
Yeah, I would say it starts with the CEO, right? Like, who are you? What's your vision for the company? All of our core values: be first, be fast, persist, do more, be direct, show respect, be flexible, embrace change, be inspired, be proud, say it, own it, dream up, team up, be helpful, build trust. That is us. And that is the organization, and it flows through my blood and into our team's blood. So I think when you're starting to figure out what your Simon Speed is, really it's figuring out who you are as a leader and what you want your company to be. You know, you can't say you're Simon Speed and then not respond to emails every day, right? Like, that doesn't work. You have to figure out who you are. And I think that's so important, especially today when you're trying to attract and retain talent. Obviously, yes, pay is a big thing, but like, what is your culture like? You know, and I try to do little things. Right now, I'm out of town for the summer. I like to work remote for a couple months of the year to really kind of refocus, recharge. And one thing I do every day is I call at least 3 employees and just check in for maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's a 10-minute phone call to see. And I have a list, and my assistant Chief of Josh is really good about keeping me on, you know, making sure my list is always updated. You know, when I'm in the office, I stop by everyone's desk and say, what's up? A little fist pound. That's my secret. That's like my, hey, what's up? I also send handwritten thank you notes to 3 employees a week. And we do something called the Big Deals chain, and Big Deals with a Z, which is kind of very, very Simon. You know, that's our culture. And every 2 weeks, I give the chain, and it's got like a big, kind of like a Georgia football, like I scored the touchdown collar, and it goes to one employee, and they get the front parking spot for 2 weeks, which in the summer, when it's hot, it's covered. It's a very valuable commodity. And they get, you know, we get a video that gets sent out to the company. So I think whatever it is that you're going to do, it really needs to start from the top and then work itself down.
Handwritten notes from the CEO.
Yeah, I can tell you, I already wrote my 3 for the week. They're right here. Well, here's my 3 for the week, ready to go out when I send the mail back to the office.
So the interesting part of life right now is, what I've been talking to people about, what I've experienced in my own company is it's not about money anymore, the primary motivator. Money is a motivator for people, but that quality of life experience that you're delivering from the top down is what it's all about right now. That's what I'm finding people. So the fact that you're sending handwritten notes, so, you know, we're speaking with Mr. Josh Simon of SimonCRE. Check it out at simoncre.com. And Josh, what people are listening right now, the fact that you send handwritten notes, how long does it take you to write those notes, just personally?
You know, I'm a pretty quick writer, so maybe it's 5 to 7 minutes a week.
So for 5 to 7 minutes a week, you are building trust and loyalty amongst your employees. Like, it doesn't, I mean, look, folks, you can send your people on a trip to the Bahamas, you know, but the reality is, and I've talked about this so many times, incentives are not just monetary. They're things that people value. And the fact that you're sending out weekly handwritten notes, people value that type of thing. The fact that you have the big chain around there and it says you're the big dog, and you know, here in Arizona in the middle of the summertime, you got covered parking, that speaks volumes to people. And I had a client that I helped one time, they had this thing, and I thought at first, I thought this was kind of like a little strange, right? But they had something they called the Yankee Award. And the Yankee Award was to the department or the division that was doing best. They had this 7-foot stuffed giraffe. And they would take this giraffe and they would every month move it around, or if it was in 2-3 months in the same place, because they won, you know, performance awards, right? And when I first saw this, I was like, it's a little weird to me, but the people internally would compete more for that Yankee Award than they would for anything else in the company. So the message I'm getting is differentiate even within your own company and show people that you care, and that people respond and they'll do the right thing, but not only the right thing internally within the company. I'm going to go out on a limb here without asking and just assume that they probably do the same thing for the clients, your clients, their clients, that they're going out and they're going above and beyond because you're teaching them what to do from the CEO down.
That's exactly right.
Wow, that is so powerful. I remember hearing a story about Wynn Hotel one time, whether you like Steve Wynn or not, type, you know, folks, those of you listening. I remember one of his employees one time, somebody drove like an hour and a half to get to the hotel, and she was a little older and she forgot her heart medication, I think it was. So the employee, after hours, got in his car, drove to her town, picked her medication up for her, and drove an hour and a half back. Well, I can tell you that made me want to stay at the Wynn Hotel when I went to Las Vegas versus all the other hotels. So in a competitive field like commercial real estate development, or any competitive field, the fact that your people go above and beyond, that's going to give you competitive edge no matter what. Is that right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. And you know what? Your team enjoys working for your clients. They love being a part of it. You know, even employees that aren't ex-employees, right? They understand our organization. Hey, it didn't work out, but they have nothing but respect for what we do and how we do it. And so it creates a really unique set of tentacles into the commercial real estate marketplace for us.
And I would imagine that also improves the online reputation and things like Glassdoor, things that employees actually fill out because they feel loved, valued, trusted, respected, et cetera.
Well, I mean, you just go to somebody's website. I think, you know, a lot of people ask, hey, how are you able to find, you know, good talent, or what do you do? And just, you visit somebody's website. Like, imagine if you're looking for a job or you're talking to somebody, the first thing anyone does is Google, right? And then they go to the website and you get a feel. If your website looks like it was built in the 1990s, yeah, culture's probably pretty lame, most likely. But like, look, if you have, you know, exciting, you know, group of people, like our website, our marketing team put a picture of our puppy, my dog, that I bring to the office quite a bit. And he's a junior project manager, and people love it. He has an email too that like comes to me for, you know, like scout@SimonCRE.com. And I literally will get emails once a quarter from somebody that sees it and they think it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I think it's like, hey, be unique, be who you are. And my company is me, right? And I've been able to develop a culture that like is me.
So I can imagine people are thinking right now, my gosh, okay, I'm lacking culture in my company, because they are. Like, really, when it comes down to it, they've been, you know, just kind of going along, doing their thing. How does one, like, you know, as the CEO of your company, or as CEO of the founder, or whatever company they own today, what are kind of like some of the steps? Like, step back for a second, if you would, and say, okay, if I was going to do these 3 to 5 things to start culture in my company, what would you do? Would you start with the end in mind? What kind of thing you want, or whatever it might be? What would you advise people to do?
Well, I think, what's the purpose? So understanding the purpose of creating this culture, right? Understanding your mission, vision, values, so that everyone's kind of on the same page. And then, who's your leadership team? Do you have an executive team? We have 2 things called we have the A team, 2 of them, and they're basically, one's operational excellence. And they focus on process improvements. They're all managers. And then we have one that's the culture team, and they only focus on culture. And so I now, because now the organization's at a size, like this culture that we've created has been built up over 12 years. We have gotten to the size over the last 7, 8 years as we've grown that we need buy-in from everybody else. So a lot of feedback on what's working, what's not. How do we make our culture better? Like I noticed, I had feedback probably 6 months ago that people felt disconnected sometimes from me, like they didn't understand what was going on and what I was thinking. And so I started doing a monthly video to the company. I'd self-record it, 5 minutes, just reading off an iPad, nothing professionally done, phone pointing back. And the feedback has been tremendous. They're like, oh my God, that's our CEO. Like, wow. Like he knows we have trust that he's going to get us through this, whatever situation. And hey, he's the right leader. And so I think so much of the culture is getting the feedback from everybody else and allowing it to permeate up to you and not sitting like, in your office closed off to everybody. I'm a very open door CEO. And I think that's really important because a lot of times you got to hear the things you really don't want to hear. And it's really important to create an environment that you can hear those things. And like, look, type A hard charging CEOs, they don't want to hear things right? Like, we don't want to hear that we did anything wrong and that, there's a lot of tough conversations, but I think those are the opportunities for growth.
And why is that? Because to me, that's people hire me, I come in, I do an audit on their company and I have a list of a sheet that, the things, if you were CEO, you would not want to hear, right? So I think I understand why, but I think other people, why is it so important to hear the things for growth, or maybe that's the reason, as you said it, but why is it important for somebody to be open to this whole process?
Because it's reality, right? There's your reality of this podcast, there's my reality of this podcast, and there's whatever's in the middle. And if we have two different sets of reality, like an employee might, you might be hearing that, the team says, oh, well, Josh doesn't communicate well, or they don't do this. And you might be thinking, oh, well, I do that all the time. But the reality is that's not what's being heard. And it's just like, if a customer's not happy, you might have thought that you've done everything right, but from their perspective, it wasn't. And so being able to be open to that feedback, and look, when you're presenting to it, you've got to pick and choose. Hey, there might be 20 things on that list, but what are really the 5 that are going to move the needle?
Makes a lot of sense. I want to shift gears just for a second. You organically funded your company, and a lot of times people are organically funding their companies. They're always thinking, oh, I need more money, or I need more this, or I need more that. How did you continue the growth? In other words, if you sold something, did you take a piece of that and then reinvest it into different divisions or different departments? How did it kind of work? Because a lot of times people who are listening to this, they've asked me this question numerous times. They're a little confused, like, should I go get a bank loan? Should I go get an investor? Should I go get that? But I really want to hold my company all by myself, but it's always the chicken and egg. I need this initiative, but I don't seem to have the cash. So how did you do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially, I literally had 50 grand to my name when I started. And so the first few deals we would do is I'm also to do real estate, you basically have to have your brokerage license just to be legal. So I would also do some side deals of teeing up a couple, what we call tenant reps, where I would just represent somebody looking for space to make some easy cash so I could afford my car, food, all that stuff. The first, few deals we did were, 2010 is when we went to buy something. I didn't want to have equity partners. Why? Because if you get an equity partner, let's just say you're giving them half of the upside on every deal you do. I went and decided, well, I'm going to really roll the dice. I'm going to go super high interest loans and get hard money because, at the time, 20, 25, 26-year-old, no real track record on my own, not a lot of money. And so I was able to do those first few deals paying, I think it was like 16 or 18%. But we would sell them within 6 months. And so I would sell them, I'd pay the interest, and I would keep all the proceeds. And so we were able to, instead of, a popular thing is to 1031 your deals so that you kind of delay taxes. My whole theory was, hey, you don't build the Sears Tower on a small foundation. So we need to pay the tax so we can build a big foundation. In our business and in real estate, cash is king, and you need a lot of cash to do deals. And so fast forward 12 years, we've pretty much recycled most deals. We probably sold close to 200, and we'll probably sell another chunk of those out of the 260 we've developed. So we've been pretty much a net seller of everything, but we've paid the tax as we've moved along, and that's been able to get us to the point where we don't need partners. And so the financing mechanisms we used were mostly obviously normal bank loans, which took a while to get qualified for in the beginning. And then we created this kind of mezz debt situation where we would go raise, and you can't do it as a second loan because of the Dodd-Frank passing of 2000, what is that, 10 or 8, where they had a high volatility construction real estate loan, which basically said, hey, you can't leverage up to 100%. So we created a new structure where basically we would allow an investor to come into our operating agreement, but I would have the right, they would technically be a partner, but I could buy them out at a 10% or 12% simple interest rate. So we were able to create this new financing mechanism where, hey, yeah, we're going to pay more in interest, but we get to keep more of the upside. And so you fast forward, we've been, very, blessed not to need equity partners up until this point.
What's so cool about what you just said is you self-finance this thing and you looked at the interest rate as it's just kind of a mechanism. It was like, just get me to the next level, where a lot of people look at an interest rate and they go, my gosh, it's 28%. And it's like, well, if you make, $300,000, but you paid 28%, you're still up. X 100,000
versus giving half of the deal to somebody.
Exactly. So it's a way of leveraging your growth and understanding. You're like, hey, look, this is just part of the deal. We're going to pay to play. That's what's happening. And so many business owners, they don't do that because they get like too myopically focused in, oh my gosh, I'm paying this per interest, but they're not realizing what they get from the actual side of the investment if they move into it, and whether it's real estate or any type of investment. I've talked to people in the SaaS business. I've talked to people in whatever solar business. Same thing. They look at it differently. I think it's how humans look at it more like scarcity versus opportunity. Like I heard the head of Virgin Airlines once say, Richard Branson, hey, I always try to keep 5%, and that's what I'm looking for. So everything else really doesn't matter, because if you get 5% of multiple billions of dollars, it's a lot of money. And so I hear you employing the same type of philosophy. So thanks for sharing all this. Hey, we're speaking with Josh Simon of SimonCRE.com. Check it out. Smart dude, obviously, on this line. Josh, I can speak with you all day, but I promised we'd be in and out on time. So I just have one more question. People ask this question all the time. Okay, you got 60 employees, you're doing what, $750 million plus dollars in real estate. You said billions. In the hopper, if you will, to put potentially. Somebody's thinking, oh my gosh, how does Josh like to be? How does he like to buy? In other words, if I wanted to get a hold of somebody like him in his position as a CEO of a company, how do I penetrate that account? What are some of the things that they could do that would be something that you personally, as a CEO of a company of this size, would want to see?
Well, I think it's really simple. All selling is description, DMRVP, description meaning relevance, value, purpose. And anytime you're making a sale, you should be speaking to all those things. If depending on the person you're selling to, a lot will force you, and most CEOs can skip to just give me the purpose. And so when I want to be sold to, I don't need the description, meaning, relevance, and value. I just want to understand the purpose, because I can tell you the rest of the narrative. And so I think, like most CEOs, when you're trying to get into that market, get to the point, get to the purpose of what you're trying to pitch.
Excellent advice. Josh, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm really grateful you were here today.
Thank you.
So how many of you have employees or have outsourced vendors or whatever, and you're not really keeping in touch with them as Josh is doing? For example, he's sending at least 3 handwritten notes or letters to his employees, thanking them and telling them, basically how special they are and how appreciative he is to have them in the organization. When do you do that even with your clients? How many of you actually invest I don't know, what does it cost? $9 to send something like that to 3 clients a month or a week? Think about this for a second. If you send $9 a week, you're investing what? $450 a year in order to tell clients that you appreciate them. How much do you think they're going to remember you if you send them a handwritten note? As he said, it takes about 5 to 7 minutes to do it, maybe 9 minutes, out of your time. What are you doing? What's your culture like? Do you just step back and think during this, oh my gosh, maybe my culture is not what it should be? Are you taking the top-down approach as you, the founder or the CEO or whatever position you're in? Maybe you run a division. Are you taking the top-down approach to say, hey, I'm responsible for this. Let me create the culture here. Let me let people know how valued they are, and let me help them along their paths. There's so much that came out of this podcast in such a little period of time that I would recommend you go back and listen to it again. So as always, if you want content, certain subject matter, reach out to me at Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com, and we will bring that content to you. We'll find the guest if we don't already have the guest on our own radar, and we'll bring that content to you. If you love this podcast, please subscribe to it if you haven't already. Tell your friends, have them subscribe, and please give 5-star reviews. The more of those we get, the happier we are. So aren't the algorithms that boost our rankings for this particular podcast. And as always, if you want to grow your revenues, you want to put on A players for sales, those who hire, manage, retain, and train those people, or you want to get yourself or someone on your staff or someone to the top 1% in your sales globally in your industry. In other words, the revenues that are coming out of that and the commissions that you might be driving, reach out to me at Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com, Doug Brown 123, that's LinkedIn, or reach out on the company at 603-595-0303. This is Doug Brown signing off on another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Go out, sell something, sell a lot, sell it profitably, make people happy, and you be happy too. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.